I never thought a simple evening conversation could shift the entire balance of my marriage. My wife Rachel had always had this sharp tongue, the kind that could cut through confidence like a knife. But that night, she crossed a line I had never seen her cross before. We were sitting in our living room in Boise, Idaho. The soft hum of the air conditioner filled the space between us. I was reading a book, half paying attention to the evening news, when she casually dropped a bomb that caught me entirely off guard. You know, if I wanted, I could have someone new in my life within 24 hours, she said, her tone playful, but her eyes daring me to react. She leaned back, crossing her legs, a smirk curling on her lips. I didn't flinch. I didn't even look up from my book. Rachel thrived on reactions, anger, panic, jealousy, but I had learned long ago that conceding to her little games only fueled her. I closed the book slowly, letting the click of the cover resonate in the quiet room. "Is that so?" I asked calmly, my voice even measured. Not cold, not indifferent, just calm. The kind of calm that unsettles someone used to watching you squirm at their words. Rachel blinked, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. She had expected a spark of indignation, perhaps even a sharp retort. Instead, she found none. She leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees, her smirk faltering. "You're not taking this seriously," she said, almost incredulously. I looked at her then, really looked, seeing the mixture of confidence and insecurity that always danced in her eyes. "I am," I said softly, "and yet I don't feel threatened. Go ahead, try. See what happens." Rachel laughed, a short, almost nervous sound. "You think I'm bluffing?" she asked, her voice wavering slightly. That was the moment I knew the tables had shifted. For years, she controlled the narrative of our marriage through manipulation, teasing, and those little verbal jabs designed to make me doubt myself. But that evening, the power dynamic changed without me raising my voice or issuing any threats. I simply remained unshaken, a mirror to her own boldness. I could see her mind working, recalculating, assessing. She had underestimated my capacity for patience, for restraint, and for seeing through her bravado. In that moment, the room felt smaller, the air thicker, and I realized something crucial. Confidence, when calm and unreactive, was more formidable than any argument she could muster. Rachel shifted in her seat, suddenly restless. "So what? You're just going to sit there and let me say things like that?" she asked, a hint of challenge in her tone. I shook my head slowly. "I'm not letting anything, Rachel. I'm simply observing." I could see her confusion deepen. Observation was not a tactic she understood well. She was used to instant reactions, snap judgments, and the subtle surrender that often followed. But I wasn't playing her game anymore. I was setting my own rules. She leaned back again, arms crossed, and for a moment there was silence. Then, almost reluctantly, she asked, "And if I did, what then? If you were gone tomorrow, would you really care?" I considered her question carefully, not because it frightened me, but because the answer had to be precise, unshakable. "I would care, of course," I said, meeting her gaze evenly, "but not in the way you think. I would care about integrity, about truth, about respect. Those are things no one can replace. Not in a day, not ever." Her smirk faltered further, replaced by a thin line of doubt. "Integrity, respect," she echoed, her voice almost incredulous. "I'm talking about someone who can love me, spend time with me, make me laugh, someone who can—" I interrupted her gently, still calm. "Rachel, love is not commodity. It's not a transaction where someone can be swapped in and out on a schedule. What you call replacement is only possible in illusion, not reality." I could see her processing this, her eyes narrowing slightly as if she were both intrigued and frustrated. She had never encountered resistance like this from me. Never. For so long, our arguments have been cycles. Her provocation, my reaction, her satisfaction. But now I had broken the cycle, simply by remaining steady, by refusing to be baited. Rachel let out a small sigh, almost imperceptible, and for a moment she was quiet. That silence was louder than any argument we had ever had. She was trying to find footing in a conversation she hadn't anticipated. Her mind was racing, piecing together the realization that her usual tactics no longer worked. And in that quiet, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. I had not shouted. I had not begged. I had not displayed anger or hurt. I had only been myself. And that, it seemed, was enough to unsettle her. "Fine," she said finally, almost muttering to herself. "Maybe I underestimated you." Her words were tentative, as if testing the waters. But in that admission, there was recognition, perhaps the first real recognition in years, that the dynamic between us had shifted. I simply nodded, letting her statement hang in the air without embellishment. No triumph, no gloating, just calm acknowledgement. I knew the real challenge wasn't over. Rachel had a way of testing boundaries, of probing weaknesses. But I also knew something important. When a person's power depends on provoking others, removing the reaction removes the power. And for the first time in our marriage, I felt like I was holding the reins, not with force, but with steady presence, with measured words and quiet confidence. Rachel looked at me, her eyes a mix of curiosity, frustration, and perhaps a hint of admiration she would never admit aloud. She leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand, studying me as if trying to decode a language she didn't know. "You really don't feel threatened?" she asked quietly, almost whispering. I shook my head. "Not in the slightest. You may try, you may boast, but my sense of self, my clarity, isn't tied to anyone proving something to me. And neither is the truth of our marriage." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "You're calm. Too calm," she murmured. That's when I realized something critical. Calmness is often mistaken for weakness, but it is in fact one of the most disarming weapons a person can have. It reflects control, patience, and a refusal to be manipulated. I had learned that lesson the hard way over years of living through tension, provocations, and the endless games people play when they feel threatened. "I'm not here to prove myself," I continued softly, "and I'm not here to watch you prove yourself either. If your idea of love is a race to see who can be replaced first, then maybe you need to reconsider what love really means. It's not speed. It's depth. It's understanding. It's trust." I could see her processing every word, the smirk on her face replaced by a contemplative frown. She shifted in her seat again, a subtle sign of discomfort. I didn't need to push further. The silence did the work that confrontation never could. It was in that silence that the truth settled between us, like dust floating in a sunbeam, impossible to ignore. Rachel had always thrived on reaction, on chaos, on emotional fireworks. But she couldn't manufacture a response from me. Not tonight. Not in that moment. Finally, she spoke, her voice lower now, tinged with something softer. "Maybe I underestimated how much you value yourself, how much I don't control you." The admission was brief, almost buried under layers of habit and pride. But it was there. That was enough. That single quiet acknowledgement marked a turning point in our dynamic. The game had changed, and I had won. Not by yelling, not by scheming, but simply by being unwavering in my calm. I smiled gently, not with triumph, but with quiet assurance. "It's not about control, Rachel. It's about understanding. It's about knowing the worth of the people in your life. Not just yourself, but those around you. If we ever want to move forward, it has to be based on respect, on clarity, and on honesty. Anything less is just posturing." She nodded slowly, still digesting my words. The room was filled with a new kind of energy, not tension, not anger, but a tentative recognition that something fundamental had shifted. That night, I went to bed without the usual argument, without the simmering frustration that had plagued us for years. And for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace, a sense of control not taken, but reclaimed. Rachel, for all her bravado and attempts at dominance, had met someone who would not play along, someone who understood that true strength is often quiet, composed, and patient, someone who knew that power lies not in who can replace whom, but in the clarity of one's own self-worth, and in that calm, measured response, in that refusal to be shaken or provoked. I realized something vital. It wasn't about proving her wrong. It was about proving myself right. And Rachel, for all her confidence, had finally understood.